Hello everyone, my name is Evgeny and you're back on the ZHENATAN channel. When I started making my first wooden barrel, I found that there was a catastrophic lack of information on this topic. That's why, starting with today's video, I will be telling you and showing you in detail how to make each element of a wooden barrel. Friends, if you're interested in this information, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There will be many more very interesting videos coming up. And in today's video I'll tell you about the different types of barrels, how to calculate the width of a stave, how to determine the number of staves for the barrel's body, how to figure out the angle of the stave's side face, and which templates you need to make. The first question I want to address is the dimensions of a wooden barrel. You can get the dimensions of a wooden barrel either from this is old regulatory documentation, the old Soviet GOST 8777. I made the second table myself. This table shows the barrel capacities, the number of staves, the dimensions of the templates for these staves, as well as the distance to the groove for the bottom, the angles, and so on. And for further calculations, what we mainly need are the height and the diameters at the widest part of the barrel, that is at the bilge, and at the ends, that is at the chine.
Friends, making a wooden barrel begins with properly splitting and then sewing the log into blanks for the wooden staves. The correct orientation of the annual rings is when the rings are perpendicular to the wide face of the blank. When sewing blanks for the wooden staves, it is also necessary to allow, so to speak, for shrinkage leave, some extra material for drying. For oak, this allowance is 8 to 12%. We make the blanks a bit wider and a bit thicker than necessary. After sewing, we need to properly dry the blanks for the wooden staves. I stack them in a pile and they dry for 6 to 12 months outdoors. The longer, the better.
I dry the blanks for the wooden staves in stacks like these. After drying, we need to make staves of the required length from these blanks. Naturally, cracks form at the ends during drying. The length of the cracks depends on the drying conditions. With natural drying, these cracks will be quite small. With artificial drying, that is quickly over 40 to 50 days, the cracks will be quite large, quite significant. Therefore, on one side, they need to be cut off. Next, we measure the required length and cut off the other side. Thus, we prepare blanks of the required length. First, we need to determine how many staves we will use in the wooden barrel. Let's say we have some wooden blanks and they have a certain width. For example, the width is 40 millimeters. After making the wooden stave, the remaining width of this blank will in any case be at least 39 millimeters or at best 38. So let's assume our stave is 38 millimeters wide. Now, in order to find out the number of staves, we need to know the circumference at the widest part of the wooden barrel. For this, we take this table or use the GOST standard. And for a barrel with a volume of 6 liters, the diameter at the widest part should be 254 millimeters. That's on the outside. So we multiply 254 by 3.14. As a result, we get 780, roughly speaking. So we need to divide this resulting number by 38 millimeters. The width of our future stave will be 38 millimeters. And in the end we will get the number of staves. That is, we simply divide the circumference by the width of the future stave, and as a result we get the number of staves. In order to determine the width of the stave that we need to use to make the barrel, we need to know the circumference either at the widest point, if we're talking about a barrel like this, or at the bottom of the stave, or the bottom of the barrel, if we're talking about a tab. So let's say we've decided that we will use 20 staves. We take the resulting number, that is 254, multiply it by 3.14 and divide by 20 staves. As a result, we get the width of a stave. Next, in order for all the staves to fit together, that is, there needs to be a certain angle between them so that they ultimately form a circle, we need to mill the stave at a specific angle. If you look at it in profile, it has the shape of a trapezoid. We need to calculate this angle. To calculate the angle of the side face of a wooden barrel, we need 360 degrees. A barrel has the shape of a circle, and a circle is 360 degrees. So we divide that by the number of staves we are going to use. So if the barrel uses 20 staves, we divide 360 by 20 and then divide by 2 again, since each stave has 2 sides. As a result, 360 divided by 20 divided by 2 equals 9 degrees. So for such a barrel using 20 staves, the angle of the side face will be 9 degrees. After calculating the angle, we need to shape the stave in such a way that we end up with a convex barrel. To do this, you need to mill the stave and give it the shape of a rhombus without the tips. When you assemble such staves into a circle, you can see that the top part comes together, while at the bottom we get gaps like these. Next, when tightening, the stave bends in the central part, in the middle, and as a result we get a convex barrel like this. How do you determine the difference in width of the stave at its widest point and at the edges? Nowadays, fairly simple numbers are used. That is, in this illustration you can see that for a tub stave and for a barrel stave, the difference between the width at the edges and in the middle is 8 to 12%. With a width of 100 millimeters, the stave will have a width of 92 to 88 millimeters at the edges. How do you achieve this shape of rivet? For this, I use these kinds of templates. The templates are made from a piece of laminate. Laminate has proven itself to be excellent for this purpose. In other words, all my templates are made from laminate. What exactly is a template? The base is a sheet of laminate on which we cut out the profile of our future rivet. We can draw a diamond shape, cut it out with a jigsaw or on a bandsaw, and then to smooth out the corner in the middle, we simply use sandpaper to slightly round off that corner. And you're not just rubbing with sandpaper, so to speak, but rather you carefully smooth the corner by moving the template itself over the sandpaper. This way, we end up with a smooth corner and a nice looking template. Using this template, we get the rivet we need in the shape of a truncated diamond. How do you create the required angle on the side face? For this purpose, I made a milling device from an old broken angle grinder. On my homemade milling machine, I use a cutter with a diameter of 20 millimeters and a working height of 40 millimeters. This cutter is equipped with a guide bearing. The cutter is set up for 21 rivets, which means an angle of 8 degrees and 36 minutes. Here we already have a milled rivet. If we look at it from the end, we can see this angle. If you place the rivet on a flat surface and, for example, put a carpenter's square carefully against the side face, you will clearly see the angle of the side face, which in this particular case is 8 degrees and 36 minutes. To determine the angle, I use this kind of protractor. Here we have the indicator set to 8 degrees and 36 minutes. You can see there are no gaps anywhere. The side face and the inner surface of the rivet fit perfectly against our protractor, meaning the angle is set correctly. If we use a template where the rivet is positioned with the outer side facing up, then the milling cutter will be, roughly speaking, facing the wall. And in this position, the lower part of the workpiece will essentially be removed and in this way we achieve the required angle. However, if we use a milling method where the inner part remains on top and the outer part is on the bottom, then the milling cutter should be positioned like this. That is, here we will have the necessary angle and the material will be removed at this angle, but now from the upper side of the rivet. Thus, after calculating the number of rivets, after determining the angle to which the side face of the wooden rivet needs to be milled, after making the template and milling the side face of the rivet while simultaneously giving it the shape of a rhombus without vertices, you can proceed to the next operation, namely assembling the framework to obtain a structure like this and clamping it together. Friends, how to assemble the rivets into a structure like this using working hoops, how to tighten the framework of a wooden barrel, what you need for this, and what tools are required. I will tell you all about this in the next video. Well, that's all for today. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.